Welcome back everyone to another episode of Vegetarian Cooking with JJ. In this week's episode, we're traveling to Ethiopia in my kitchen, and I'm going to be making a very delicious and spicy dish known as Beefless Tibs, including some Awaze sauce, of course. And if you're not a spicy person, then feel free to gain inspiration from this recipe and make it your own. I'm also going to be making some Injera Bread, and I'll show you what it looks like. Here are the delicious Beefless Tibs and Injera we're going to be making today. So let's head over to the kitchen and get cooking! First of all, I'm adding 1 cup of vital wheat gluten flour to this bowl and 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, 1 teaspoon of onion powder, and 1/2 teaspoon of paprika, and 1/4 teaspoon of ground thyme. Here I have some fresh rosemary leaves I'm chopping up, and we're going to want to get 1 teaspoon of finely chopped rosemary. Here I have 1 sprig of fresh oregano, and we're going to chop it up nicely and also get 1 teaspoon. So here's our 1 teaspoon of freshly chopped oregano. I'm just mixing together our dry ingredients here, and I'm going to add our herbs, our rosemary, and our oregano. Over here in this bowl, I'm adding 1/2 cup of water, 2 teaspoons of soy sauce, 1 teaspoon of liquid smoke, and 1/4 cup of mushroom stock. Now we're going to go ahead and quickly add our liquid to the dry ingredients. Once it all comes together, you can mix it with your hands. You're going to want to pull and stretch the dough. This is what provides that meaty texture. You're going to want to do this for 5 minutes, no more, no less. If you overdo it, it will be very tough. And if you underdo it, it will be more like a bread texture. After pulling and stretching the dough for 5 minutes, you're going to want to let it rest for 10 minutes. Now we're going to heat our stovetop to medium. We have a stock pot, a veggie stock. It's homemade. The dark color is due to the different spices. I use the poultry seasoning. And we're going to add 2 tablespoons of molasses. I'm also adding some mushroom stock, about 1/2 cup's worth. And I have a tablespoon of miso paste I'm adding, just stir it in. I'm adding 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast as well. 1 teaspoon of our garlic powder. 1 teaspoon of our onion powder. And 1 teaspoon of our berbere spice blend. Our seitan dough has been resting for 10 minutes, so we're going to want to cut it up. You're going to want to cut it up smaller than you think you should because it is going to expand 3 times the size, and you're also welcome to shape them how you would like if you want to give them a little roll with your fingers. So we have our pieces all cut up now, and they're ready to go. So we'll just pop them in our simmering liquid. We're going to bring this to a boil and then reduce it and let it simmer for an hour. You can see here that the pieces have expanded. Now over in this bowl, I'm adding 1 cup of our teff flour, 1 1/4 teaspoons of our instant yeast, and I'm going to stir in 1 cup of our warm water. Now that it's smooth, we're going to cover it and let it sit for 1 hour. If you've ever been to an Ethiopian restaurant, or if you ever go to an Ethiopian restaurant, you will learn right away that the food is meant to be shared. Normally, the various stews are laid on top of the Injera bread. It's kind of like a spongy crepe-like bread, and you use this bread to eat the stews with. So there's no cutlery involved whatsoever. This Injera bread is made with teff flour, and teff is actually the smallest grain in the world. It also happens to be gluten-free and filled with nutrients. And normally, to make this Injera bread, it involves a 3-day fermentation process. But I'm not going to be doing it that way. I'm going to be using a method that I learned from George Brown College as a part of the Vegetarian Culinary Arts program. I do highly recommend checking out that program if you enjoy cooking and if you enjoy eating. You will be well fed. I am making the injera bread the quick method because I'm also making seitan, which takes time, so trying to balance things out time-wise. The teff flour is high in protein, high in iron, contains calcium, fiber, and it actually has insoluble fiber, which acts as a prebiotic, so it's good for your gut health as well. Our seitan has been cooking for 1 hour, so it is ready. Now moving on to our Awaze sauce, I'm adding 3 tablespoons of our pepper spice to this bowl. And I'm adding 1 teaspoon of our freshly ground black pepper, 1 teaspoon of our ground cumin. I'm microplaning some ginger here. I'm going to use 1 teaspoon of our microplaned ginger. I'm mixing our spices in this bowl and I'm adding in our microplaned ginger and 1 tablespoon of our olive oil. And we're going to add a 1/4 cup of water. Give it a nice stir. I'm dicing up 1/2 of a yellow onion. And 1 jalapeno pepper. Now I'm chopping up 4 cloves of garlic. We have our lemon here. I'm going to get some juice out of it. Freshly squeezed lemon juice is the best. And I'm going to be using 30 milliliters in this recipe. Now I'm skipping out our seitan pieces out of our simmering broth. I'm going to be using this broth for later on, and the rest of it I'll use for other recipes. We're setting our stovetop to medium, getting our large pan hot, adding some oil to our pan. Traditionally, ghee is used, but you can use an oil of your choice. We're adding in our diced onions and our Beefless Tibs, our seitan pieces. We're going to cook this up for a bit. There is a very sweet Ethiopian tradition called gursha. It's where you actually hand feed someone that you're close with during the meal. Now, I don't recommend trying this with strangers, although there is a guy who did this, and not even in a restaurant, it was right on the streets. He was successful with some, but you may not be. I've uncovered our injera batter and you can see it's foamed up, so I'm adding 1/2 cup of water, a couple of pinches of salt, a 3/4 teaspoon of our baking powder, 2 teaspoons of our apple cider vinegar. Just whisk it together so it's smooth. Now back over to our pan. I'm adding in our garlic now that our onions have softened. Give it a nice stir, and I'm adding in the jalapeno as well. And I'm going to let this cook for a minute or 2 before we deglaze the pan. Now I'm going to deglaze the pan with our simmering liquid. And it's time to add in our Awaze sauce. Incorporate it evenly. And I'm adding in the lemon juice for the finishing touch. Now we're pouring our injera batter into this hot oiled pan. Once it starts to bubble, cover it and cook it for 2 to 3 minutes. You will know that it's done when the edges start to lift off from the pan. I just rolled up our Injera bread because I thought it would be more presentable with the one dish. So I'm adding our Beefless Tibs to this plate now. You can add cilantro or parsley for the finishing touch. I thought I had cilantro, but it turns out I ran out, so parsley it is. It's that time again. I get to try it. So we use the injera as a type of cutlery or a replacement of cutlery. So this is going to be messy. I'm planning to do the messy way today, unlike the previous one. Very delicious. Very nice spice level. If you want it more saucy, you can add more of the stock. Something to keep in mind if you're not used to spice, bebere, that spice is quite hot for those who are not used to spice. So if you're a newbie or trying to get used to spice, take it easy. You may want to taste test it ahead of time. Start off slow. Use less of the bebere spice, okay? And then you can also have some vegan yogurt on the side, just in case. Here we go. It has a rich flavor and the texture is on point. So if you try this recipe for yourself, feel free to share in the comments below. Or if you've tried a vegan version of the Beefless Tibs, feel free to share. Do you have a favorite Ethiopian restaurant in the city of Toronto? It is predominantly vegetarian and vegan too. So it's quite easy to find all the vegan options if you ever do visit Ethiopian restaurants. Let me know your favorite one if you have one in the comments below. And if any questions arise, feel free to message me down below. I enjoyed making this dish and I'm gonna enjoy eating the rest of it. Stay tuned every Monday for a new episode as we travel the globe in my kitchen. This is JJ signing off, keeping things interesting in my kitchen and in yours. Bon appetit!